Christopher.
Another week, another episode. What's going on, Jason?
Another day, another dollar.
Yeah, you made a whole dollar today?
Dude, probably.
Probably.
No, I ate lunch out and I spent money.
Oh, yeah, you're negative dollars today.
Yeah, I'm negative. I also deleted all my sound effects because
Oh, man. I was looking
don't.
forward to which weird ones are going to hit today.
I didn't have enough prep time. So next week I'll be back with bumping sounds.
It takes time to find weird things on the internet, doesn't it?
Quality weird things. So we had last week when we finished, we said we'd do Ruby trivia or have a guest this week. And our guest for next week, I was talking to her and she was like, yeah, I'll be there on the 14th. And I was like, great. And for some reason I thought that was today. So like I didn't plan any Ruby trivia. And then she was like, no, remember it's next week. And I was like, oh, I'm an idiot. So we're doing neither of those things today. But I think we've compiled a list of good things to chat about.
Yeah.
But before we do that, how's your week?
Oh, my week's been long. I've been doing accounting things, QuickBooks and PayPal and stuff. Not my favorite. Not fun when QuickBooks randomly just doesn't import, 4 transactions here and 5 over there, and you're reconciling things and things are just straight up missing. It's kind of the worst thing in the world. So,
do you have it like export from Stripe into QuickBooks?
No, not for Stripe. I have it just deposit or it keeps track of the bank deposits, and then at the end of the year you add an adjustment into your register to include the like fees that you had paid as an expense.
Okay.
Even though they're not included, you want to include those fees as revenue as well, because that's technically what you got as revenue. You just didn't see it in your bank account, and then you want to have them same amount marked as fees, so that you have more expenses on and you're more accurate in your accounting. And then PayPal integration does that automatically, and it includes a line for your sale and then a line for the fee. But I don't know why there's just transactions missing. And then I go to like reconnect the PayPal thing or to change the settings and maybe rerun it and see if it'll find the missing ones. But of course, that just doesn't do anything. It has me like try and reconnect, and then it gives me an error that I'm already connected when I click on settings. So, clearly some pretty bad software right there.
I got an email from, I do my taxes with TurboTax because the 1 year like I used an accountant, like everything got messed up.
Cool.
And so I have 2 entities, I guess. I have like my side income, which basically stopped when I took the Podia job because I stopped doing consulting. Mm-hmm. And then Southeast Ruby, like it's an LLC, but it just passes down to me.
Right.
And so I literally I got an email from TurboTax. It's like, you want to start your taxes? And I was like, yep. So I started them and like put all my numbers in, like it's set for what I'm going to make this month. Like I had my paycheck and like, I feel good about that. Hopefully when January rolls around, I can just hit file.
Man, that's nice. Yeah, I wish mine were that easy, but
do you, so for like so I don't know why we're getting into this, but why not? So like you have individual subscribers. Do you in QuickBooks treat those as individual invoices, or do you just like from Stripe say this is the lump sum that I made?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with Stripe is just the lump sum thing, but the PayPal integration is individual. So the Stripe stuff's pretty manageable. You just check and see, do the numbers every day because they only do 1 deposit per day. It makes it easy. So then you're like, okay, this number matches the number in my bank account. Easy. Then your PayPal stuff is literally every single person recorded twice because you get the fee included in there along with what you made. So that is, many records per day. which ends up being quite bare to go through and just read through these lines, and you're getting cross-eyed as you're trying to match them up, and then you get to one that's missing, and you're like, why is this month off by $57 and whatever? That's weird. It's so annoying. It makes me just want to, go start a freaking accounting software business. I just don't have time for it.
I got down to my expenses for like my side business, air quotes, and I was only off by like $15 in what QuickBooks said and like what my like record keeping matched up to, and I was pretty happy with that.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's not my favorite thing to do. But it's also one of those things too that's like, you know, it costs so much to have someone do all this for you. So it's like I don't really want to do that either, but at a point I guess it becomes worth your money to have someone else deal with it. So I don't know. Um
I actually really like doing it. I don't know why. I've always like I consider that like kind of like an organization project,
uh-huh.
and that's like right up my like OCD alley. I really like it.
Nice. Yeah, I can see that. I would rather spend my time, doing that on code instead of, you know,
Sure. It's
finding.
not it's like a break from code for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. I
The
like
other
that.
thing that's like I kind of like gamify it. So like I always put in my income first. Like that's how they walk you through it anyway. But like for Southeast Ruby, like since that is considered like just side income for me, like I put the total amount I made in and then just watch it be like you owe huge amounts of dollars and then enter in all the expenses because made hardly anything on it. And so they just come down and then eventually it like goes over to the green. Ah, so much fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know how we got on that.
No, I think it's interesting if anybody is consulting or thought about consulting or starting their own, little SaaS product. It's one of those pieces of building a business or whatever that you don't think about super often. Normally you're worried about can I make any money, period. You know,
Yeah.
that's like problem number one. This is problem number two.
Yeah.
Or maybe many down the chain, depending on your business.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll jump in. Ruby 2.6 RC1 out.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I love just looking forward to the Christmas release of a new Ruby version every year. I don't know what it is. I just know that it's coming every year, and I'm like, hey, it's like a little present.
It's
You
like
know?
when you were a kid and you'd wake up early for Santa Claus.
Yeah, exactly. And you wake up early for mats now.
No, no, I don't wake up early for it. Well, I do now because I have kids.
Yeah, well, that's true.
They'll be opening their presents and I'll be opening my computer.
Weren't you? Weren't we recently talking about mats retiring?
Yeah, we talked about that 2 episodes ago, maybe.
Yeah, it still seems so strange to me. Thinking about the sort of creator of Ruby leaving Ruby. It's fascinating.
It's it sounds so far away, but at the same time, it's not really that far away. Like it's less than 10 years, like from his like ballpark number he threw out, which was like 2025, I think.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I'm curious to see how that stuff begins to transition as we go. Because like Bundler and I mean, Yehuda used to work on a lot of Rails stuff, and we've seen people transition in and out of the community a lot over the past years. So it's interesting to see something that big. Imagine DHH passing on Ruby to some other primary maintainer. That'd be fascinating.
Yeah, I that's really fascinating to think about. I don't really want to speculate that because that would be like a whole conspiracy episode, like of what ifs. Uh, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's fascinating to think about.
yeah. It's like what are the things you have to worry about at that level? Because you want to keep the philosophy going. That's probably the main concern these creators would have is, can I find someone to replace me that has the same or very similar philosophy? Because that was the whole reason that those things became popular in the first place, you know?
Yeah, and it's like you're not, unlike selling a business, like there's no financial gain in giving it up, right? Like you're
Mhm.
just
Right, like it's purely a um it's a thing you want to pass down your like pass down in history and time, and you just don't want it to get lost, you know? Which is-
kind of like how anxiety has been passed down in my family.
yeah, exactly.
Just don't want to lose it. No, I do. Oh, I've had a horrible week with it,
Yeah.
but well, we can talk about that another time. Uh,
Um,
Rails, not Rails, Ruby 2.6 RC1 just in time compiler. Have you messed with it at all?
I have not. You were saying that it was still slow.
Well, I haven't used it. The Reddits have said like this person did a benchmark with like test, which may not be like the most accurate representation, and they even say that. But I think it was like just like a regular like Ruby application was like 8% faster than 251. I'm sorry, their Rails application was 8% faster than 251 without JIT. And
Okay.
then when they turned JIT on, it was like 24% slower.
Yeah,
And then somebody commented, it was like, really? I thought it'd be slower than that. So like
yeah. Yeah.
I
Uh,
have on my list of people I want to bring on someone who I think is really like really well versed in all that. And he spoke at Southeast Ruby. So we should ask him on and just pick his brain about the
yeah.
JIT.
Um, on the release, it says 2.6 RC1 achieved 1.7 times faster performance than Ruby 2.5 on CPU intensive non trivial benchmark workload called OptCarrot. I don't know what OptCarrot does.
It's an NES emulator.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Cause see, I guess the big thing with the difference between Ruby is like, or like this is a thing that's um as a it's like CPU intensive, whereas like your Rails applications are IO bound a lot. You know, they're waiting for your database, and you know they're waiting for HTTP requests to come in. So this may be faster at that stuff, but then also it sounds like memory intensive workloads like Rails are the thing that are still slow, but
Right.
CPU intensive stuff are faster, which is interesting.
Yeah. A
So that's
person
cool.
a person like who would be really interested in like to talk to about memory would be like Aaron Patterson.
Uh huh. Yeah.
I would love to just like talk memory with him.
Just be-
Another thing I think I read. I'm gonna pull it up. I think Truffle Ruby. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
uh-huh. Yeah. Didn't they hit 1.0 or something?
Yeah, they're like 1.0 release candidate, high number. I think. Let's see your releases. Release candidate 10 is a pre-release, and that was what's the date on that? 2 days ago. So that's right.
Cool.
Um, so for those listening who don't know what Truffle Ruby is, it's Ruby that runs on Grail, I think. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's
I don't know
Grail
how to
VM,
pronounce
Graal.
GRAAL VM. Graal VM.
And it's supposed to like Chris Seaton works on it, and he would be another fascinating person to talk to about it. But like
Have
it
haven't they said that they are capable of running Rails now with it?
they're having trouble still, I think, with Nokagiri and one other one,
Okay.
which is kind of like
Kind of important.
yeah. And once again on the Reddits where I get all my knowledge, uh somebody was like, I know they're working on these things, so I don't want to like keep asking them every time they release a release candidate. Like they'll tell us when it works.
Yeah. Man, I'm excited that that'll be fantastic too.
It's supposed to be like insane speed up.
Yeah, well, it's built on Well, I don't know what GraalVM was like a JVM thing, right?
Yeah, it's
Because we've seen other things like I forget what I always forget the names of the other ones, but like Ruby MRI is always like the worst that you could run. Um, if you're doing multi-process stuff or whatever, like using something like JRuby gives you real threads and real processes and a lot better uh, concurrency or whatever. I don't know all the details of the different ones because I normally just stick with MRI, and I think a lot of people do. Um,
yeah. I've always wanted to use JRuby. I'm like really fascinated by that project, but I've never, other than like firing it up in development, I've never put a production JRuby Rails app in the world.
yeah, and there's like Rubinius and a few others too. And I can never remember those names either. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see these come out, and then Ruby 3 was when is Ruby 3 slated for release? Like
20, I think.
2020? Really? I thought it felt like it was longer out than that, but that's probably about right.
No, so Matt's talked at RubyConf in his keynote. I think he said his goal is 2020, and then like the the phase after that, I think, is where he's like trying to not do any of the development of 3 on to see how it goes.
Interesting.
Man,
Yeah.
that would have been a really good time to have my Law and Order sound effect. Dun, 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 dun. Speaking of Rails, 5.2.2 came out.
Yeah, and what was the deal with 5.2? What was it? 5.2.1
One. It was like 5.2.1.1.
there was like Rails 5.2 had a regression or something in that security release or whatever. I can't remember exactly, but it came out and then it was like, yeah, we're gonna release another one pretty much right away.
This is supposedly the first release of a Rails like version that uses like a change log for the whole project, so you don't have to go to each like active support, active model, active record.
Oh, okay.
You can just go to the release on the like Rails.
Oh yeah, they
GitHub.
got them all on the releases page.
Yeah.
That's just nice because that was always my thing. I'll just click and open up 7 tabs and look at the change log for each of these independently.
Olivier, I think he runs keepachangelog.com, maybe. Yeah, create and maintain. I imagine he might have had something to do with that, but
Cool. Yeah, that's great.
I don't see anything like overtly exciting.
I couldn't. Yeah, this looks like just extra fixes and little small things here and there. But the one before that was actually a security release, right?
Right.
And that was what was that issue? It was a Rails 5. Yeah, active job vulnerability. And then Rails 5.2 had a active storage vulnerability.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you already been hacked.
Every like side project that I use active storage on hasn't ever released, so have fun with it.
Yeah, so anybody using those should make sure to get up to the latest Rails versions, even if you're on 4.2. There's still a patch up there for you for security fixes for the active job stuff. So,
do you use active job or use like Sidekick directly?
well, I use both, right? So, I generally, if I don't super care about performance, I'll just use active job. And I use ActiveJob regardless because every gem that uses ActiveJob, like devise to send emails or whatever, you might as well just have Sidekick connected to ActiveJob. But if you're doing a lot of jobs, it's actually like we read somewhere it was like 25% slower to go through ActiveJob to run a Sidekick job.
I think
And
that's actually like in the Sidekick documentation.
I think so. Yeah, that may be it. But yeah, so I've started to, for the jobs that I care about performance, I've started to actually just write them as Sidekick jobs themselves. But I always wire up active job to Sidekick because anything that wants to use, standard deliver later in action mailer or anything else that might be active jobs is just such a good API for libraries to implement to drop in a gem so that they automatically have that functionality that I'm going to always wire that up to. So I'm going to use both. And that's been working out pretty well. It's just once in a while, as long as you know it was a job that you wrote, you have to remember to use the Sidekick format for it instead of the active job, method to call it. That's the only weird thing about that.
Yeah, and like with active job, you can like give it an object and it converts it to global ID.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think like with Sidekick directly, it doesn't do that, right? Like you actually have to just give it like
Yeah,
a raw value and then like look it up in the job if it's a database record.
yeah, it's JSON like serialized or whatever. You could also pass in, I guess, the global ID, like signed ID or whatever.
Yeah, I guess you could do that.
But I think it's just it effectively ends up being the exact same thing as saying, here I'll give you the ID, you look it up from the database. So I don't know that it's significantly different because the nice part about Active Job is it pulls it back out later and verifies that it exists or whatever for you. So you don't have to do that. But yeah, because Sidekick just sends the data directly to Redis and serializes it, so you don't get the benefit of global ID or anything like that.
Another thing that we didn't talk about last week that I didn't realize we didn't talk about until after the show. So AWS Lambda now supports Ruby, and this would
Mm-hmm.
be like a great place to have like a cheering sound. Because like, though I don't expect to like just give up everything and like go serverless, I want to experiment with it. And like, I don't mind using like Node or something for it. But it's like, man, this would be great if I could just like write this in Ruby.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So have you seen Ruby on Jets?
No.
So Ruby on Jets, I don't know when they started development on this, but it's a Ruby serverless framework that has scaffolds, it has jobs, it has the
Whoa, this is
API is pretty
awesome.
much the API pretty much is exactly like what you see in Rails, and it'll run on Lambda and stuff. It looks like they even have some screencasts too. So that's something to look into if you want to fiddle with it because it is it got announced like a couple days after the AWS announcement, and so I don't know if they almost had to have been working on this ahead of time or something. It was too quick of a release otherwise.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And depending on what your free tier is on AWS or wherever you want to go serverless, like you potentially can run your app for pretty darn cheap on there. Uh, you'll probably still need a database somewhere and whatever, but uh, it's a cool option for sure.
So I'm trying to, okay, it will actually, like you say, Jets deploy, and I guess it'll a cloud formation stack. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I am
yeah, it looks like
intrigued.
it already has integration for that.
That's
So
really cool.
yeah, it'll be something we'll have to check out at some point.
Cool. I have a few more things. Probably a quick week. We're 24 minutes. For all you non-Vimmers like myself,
Boo!
get out of here. Um, I use VS Code, and recently I started using two machines. I have a desktop now and then like a MacBook Air. And there's this plugin that sounds like so ridiculous, but it's so great. It's just code setting sync, and it syncs all of my like extensions and themes and everything. So like I just go to my other computer and hit like Shift Command like D or something like that for download, and it just sets up my VS Code environment, and it is wonderful.
Huh, that's cool.
Yeah,
You don't have to make your dot files repository and maintain all that.
yeah. It's like it relies on like GitHub Gist, I think. So like,
Do you have to have an account or something? Where does that like? How does it know which one to download?
it actually asks you for like you authenticate with GitHub with it, and then
Okay.
give it the is it Gist or Gist?
Gist.
Yeah, cool.
Like GIF or GIF.
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm all tripped up here. You just give it like the ID to the file it generates.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
But
That's
quick shout out whoever made that, because that's like one of the things I was worried about having two machines, and so far so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a dot files repo on GitHub that I keep all my configs in, and then if I modify it on one, I just git pull on the other machine, and I've symlinked my files, so then I get the new version of that pretty much automatically, which is it comes in handy. So it's kind of similar concept. They just like automated it inside of VS Code. It sounds like, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's nice. For us on what's the word I'm looking for? Enlightened people.
Yeah.
Every time I try Vim, I like give up after like the longest I've made it's 5 days, and then I went back to like I was using Sublime at the time, and I went back and I was trying to do Vim codes in Sublime, and I was like, I know like Sublime has a Vim mode, but I was like, no, I'm just done with it. But I kept trying to do it, and I just had colons all over my code. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it when you go back and forth between stuff like that, or even programming languages, you end up like making a bunch of typos all the time because you're used to one thing at that point.
yeah, the last time I tried to like use Vim was when I was like recently like 2 weeks behind on a project, and
It's not the worst time to.
it was awful. I was like, no, like finally I was like, what are you doing? Like,
You need when you're like 2 weeks ahead on a project. That's when you start Vim, not when you're behind.
maybe like during Christmas break, I'll try it again.
Yeah, there you go. It'll be your Christmas gift to yourself.
Yeah, it'd be. I would like to say that it would be like cheaper than buying like a physical gift, but it'll cost me so much time, and
Yeah, it'll be more expensive.
yeah, it'd be better like just buying a bottle of like whiskey. Um, last thing we'll chat about. You released something into the world today, and I think
Yeah, just before we recorded, actually. I've been talking about it for long enough. We've been talking about the Tailwind CSS JavaScript components for, I don't know, a long time. And I've been working on them. I hadn't actually pulled stuff out yet into a node module because I wasn't really sure what all would need to be done for that. But actually, one of the GoRails guys, Stephen Dolan's been organizing stemawesome.com, which is a cool little site if you want to see some other stimulus packages. He's been organizing a list of those. So if you have any that you know of, you can submit them there. And it's just a cool place to keep track of all this stuff. So I posted mine up there as well. But basically, the goal is that Tailwind is awesome. However, it's super slow to work with compared to Bootstrap because you don't have modals, you don't have tabs, you don't have tooltips. It'll have all these basic things, and that takes a lot of time to go build those, and you don't want to custom build them every time. So I'm building these very generic ones so that you'll be able to drop in your HTML, add the stimulus controllers, then add your like data controller HTML tags for those stimulus controllers, and then you can use whatever classes you want to style your modal with, or your tabs or whatever, and you shouldn't have to modify the JavaScript like at all, which would be super cool. Um, so I released 3 of those so far today: tabs, drop downs, and modals, and got examples for those and stuff. So it'll be cool to see people using them, and hopefully we can make that into something that uh, is a lot more robust and covers a lot of the main things. And I also want to get some examples too of like, if you want to add other things that happen with maybe opening the modal or the tabs or something, it'd be nice to have some way of inheriting from my stimulus controllers to add in some of your own functionality into that without replacing the functionality that mine does, or doing it from scratch or whatever. So we're going to need to experiment with some of that. So anyone who's interested in contributing to that, you can go check it out. We'll have a link in the notes below the episode. So yeah, I'm excited for that. It's been a while. It's been in the works for quite a while.
Yeah, I was happy to see it today.
Yeah. And I had to learn how to create a node module. I haven't done that for a long time.
Chris Oliver, Go Rails owner, and what's the word I'm looking for? Experienced NPM maintainer.
Yeah, learning it. Yeah, it's pretty cool though. It's not super complicated. There's a little bit of weird stuff of like, it's similar to building a gem, but you have to go define your package.json, and there's a lot of extra weird things you need to do in that. And then, you're compiling these JavaScript modules that you might want to write ES6 or TypeScript in your JavaScript for development, but then when you release a package, you actually need to build a compiled version of that. So it's kind of like, I guess it's sort of similar to the C extension functionality of a Ruby gem, but you got to do this with your JavaScript to make it compatible.
Do you
So,
run it through Babel when you get ready to release it?
yeah, you run it through Webpack, and so you got to define your Webpack config and all of that stuff. One of the things we need to add is like if we add a JavaScript tooltip thing in here, because I don't think we're going to build one from scratch. I think we'll use like Tippy. Um, Tippy we can import, but we also need to import the CSS from it. So we're going to kind of like be a middleman to import Tippy's CSS and then just export it, so you can import it from the Tailwind CSS stimulus components package. Probably could have picked a shorter name for this, but
No, it's perfect.
oops, I have a typo in the README that I need to fix.
Well, cool.
But yeah, it'll be nice to have that. Hopefully, more people will contribute to it, and we'll have a lot more, you know, components finished at some point. I think it'll be nice if we can get this up to something comparable to what Bootstrap has. So we're getting there. There's a few, and there's probably bugs with like modals are a pain in the butt to do cross browser. So there's probably some fixes people will need to add for that. I've tried to test it as best I can, but
Yeah,
I
but
haven't
dude,
looked at Internet Explorer or anything.
Chromium is about to take over the world. Do you see Microsoft is going to build their next browser with Chromium instead of whatever they came up with for Edge?
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like it sparked some debate though, because I guess people don't consider Safari a browser for some reason. But everybody's like, it's coming down to like Chrome is just going to be like the player, like kind of I guess how IE was back in the day.
Uh huh.
But I don't know. I use I use my little Safari WebKit browser.
You don't use links in your terminal, just a text only browser.
No, have you? This is a weird question. Have you ever just like disabled JavaScript and browse the
Uh,
internet?
a long time ago, yeah, but I haven't done that in years because, well, the internet's not really usable anymore like that.
That's the reason I did it. I was like, how broken is my stuff? And it's not horrible, but it is a weird experience without JavaScript.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's one of those things where everything kind of relies upon it now. And yeah, it'll be something. It's kind of like, they archive those, like Web Archive is archiving like old video games and stuff, and they gotta have an emulator to archive these old games. And so it'll be something where we may have like an old JavaScript emulator that will be like, yeah, this worked in the browser back in 50 years ago, and we'll have like a certain version of JavaScript that you can use to browse certain websites or whatever. It'll be weird.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about that. That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Good catching up, talking all the Ruby things, and next week we'll have
Yeah.
a guest. And
Yeah, and then it'll be Christmas time already. You can add some Christmas jingle music to your audio clips for the next one.
it'll be all Christmas movies and Christmas audio.
There we go.
It'll probably just be like all of the Office Christmas party episodes, just clips from that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we could use quotes from The Office. I love that show.
Dude, don't get me started. That's another day. All right, man. Have a good week and chat soon.
Yeah, all right. Farewell.